Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Kicking and screaming, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is forced to oversee the protection of women's sports and minors from LGBTQ activists in white doctor coats. It's not that this Republican, if we can still call him that, finally yet begrudgingly saw the light, because you'll remember he actually vetoed those two bills. But thankfully, his state's House Republicans voted to override the veto on January 10th, and now just yesterday, that was followed up by a similar vote to override the veto in the state's Senate, making it official. DeWine had the nerve to say, in defense of his extremely unpopular move, that he thinks these decisions should be left up to the parents, that if some poor kid has the misfortune of being born into a hardcore left-wing family, that he or she is entitled to no state protections to ensure that their bodies are not medically experimented on before they even reach adulthood. That's like saying some kids just have to deal with severe neglect or other forms of abuse because of what family they're born into, as long as it's the parents' decision and they do it in the privacy of their own home. You know, there are some crazy parents out there who starve and beat their children, and those parents will say that they truly believe it's in the best interest of the child to make them tougher or more respectful or whatever. Obviously, that doesn't fly normally, that line of thinking, but when it comes to queer gender theorists, somehow it does. And apparently this view is becoming more and more popular with milquetoast Republicans, because failed presidential candidate Chris Christie uses the same argument to justify not wanting to fight politically to protect children from double mastectomies and penis-removing vaginoplasty surgeries. Funny that the prevailing orthodoxy these days is that criminals under the age of 25 do not have the mental maturity to fully understand their actions and therefore cannot be held fully accountable. But kids and teens can choose, if they want, to render themselves sterile and mutilated for the rest of their lives. It just makes total sense, I guess. I wonder if Christie or DeWine are willing to defend their lack of motivation to protect women's sports too, when 50-year-old men are now competing against 13-year-old girls and changing next to them in the locker rooms. Because that actually is happening in Canada, where a professor from York University in Toronto, and who oddly enough specializes in children and youth, whatever that means, has now ditched his name of Nicholas Cepeda to adopt the name Melody Weishart, as if he's some teen girl. This was first discovered by a reporter for Rebel News, who was threatened with arrest for trying to film and talk to those at the swim center where a full-grown man was competing against underage girls, as if him exposing all of this was somehow the crime and not this creepy professor. It turns out horrified parents had to have their daughters build tents out of towels inside the locker room just to hide from this man. And he's been getting away with this, reports say, since at least 2019. Though we did get at least one call on him to police by shocked parents, however, nothing ever came of it. Swimming Canada and Swim Ontario, the leagues which are allowing this to happen, say that swimmers are seated based on swim times instead of ages, and that shared locker room use is allowed by law. That's some cold comfort, isn't it? Joining us now to discuss is John Chuepi, the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for the American Principles Project. John, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kara.
Great. So there really is no limiting principle on the trans issue, is there? Because if a guy can say he's a woman, what now can stop him from adjusting his age too? I mean, after all, they always just say age is just a number anyways.
Well, as we know, trans is at the highest part of the intersectionality pyramid. And so they basically get to do whatever they want. And we've seen that. But I think there is a growing movement. Canada, I can't speak for because, it's kind of a fascist country now. But at least here in America, there's a growing movement to push back against this. Common sense says that men shouldn't be competing in women's sports, that kids shouldn't be getting sterilized. And although we have these, stories like you pointed out, where you have a Republican governor in Ohio vetoing legislation to protect kids, he's on the outs now, right? His legislature overrode his veto. Mike DeWine has no future in Republican politics. Maybe he'll serve on a board for a medical company that does transgender health, but that's pretty much his future now, and that's because when it comes to politics, you can't be in favor of this stuff or you're going to pay a political price.
I really do hope so. I really hope to see DeWine just pack it off into the sunset after this, because what he did was just so disgusting. What a knife from the back